I froze, my coffee mug halfway to my lips, as my wife's laughter rang out from the backyard, brighter and sharper than it had been in years. Not for me, though. For my brother. I stood at the kitchen window, watching them, Lila, my wife of 10 years, her dark hair catching the late afternoon sun, and Jack, my younger brother, leaning close, his hand brushing her arm as they shared some private joke. The kind of joke that made her eyes sparkle in a way I hadn't seen since our early days, when we were young and reckless and so in love I thought nothing could break us. My chest tightened, a dull ache spreading like wildfire, and I told myself it was nothing, just family being family, just Lila being kind to Jack, who'd been crashing at our place for a month since his latest startup tanked. But then Jack's fingers lingered on her wrist, and she didn't pull away. She leaned in. My coffee went cold in my hands, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was unraveling right in front of me, something I was too blind, or too scared, to name. I'm Tom, 38, a high school history teacher who spends his days lecturing teenagers about wars and revolutions while trying to keep my own life steady. Lila's 36, a graphic designer who works from home, her desk cluttered with sketches and empty coffee cups, her smile still capable of knocking me off balance on a good day. We live in a modest split level in suburban Ohio, the kind of place where neighbors wave and kids ride bikes until the streetlights come on. Jack, at 32, is the opposite of me, charming, restless, always chasing the next big thing kind of guy who never sticks around long enough to deal with the mess he leaves behind. He showed up 4 weeks ago, tail between his legs after his app, some fitness thing, crashed and burned, leaving him broke and homeless. Lila insisted we take him in. He's family, she'd said, her voice soft but firm, and I'd agreed because I always did when she looked at me like that. Because I trusted her. Because I loved her. That afternoon, as I watched them from the window, my mind raced, stitching together moments I'd brushed off, Lila's late-night whispers on her phone, the way she'd started wearing her favorite perfume again, the extra care she took with her hair when Jack was around. I told myself I was paranoia, the kind that creeps in when you've been married long enough to notice the cracks. But then Jack said something low, and Lila's laugh turned into a soft, intimate smile, the kind she used to save for me. My stomach twisted, and I set the mug down hard, the clink echoing in the empty kitchen. I wanted to march out there, demand to know what was so funny, why her hand was still on his arm. But I didn't. I stood there, rooted, my heart pounding like a drum, wondering if I was losing my mind, or losing her. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Dinner was quiet, Lila humming as she served lasagna, Jack cracking jokes about his failed app, me forcing smiles while my thoughts churned. I watched them, searching for clues, a glance, a touch, anything to confirm or deny the dread pooling in my gut. Lila caught my eye once, her brow furrowing. "You okay, Tom?" she asked, her voice gentle, and for a moment, I almost believed I was wrong. Almost. But then Jack reached for the salt, his fingers brushing hers, and she didn't flinch. Didn't pull back. My fork scraped the plate, too loud in the silence, and I mumbled something about being tired. That night, lying beside Lila in our bed, her breathing soft and even, I stared at the ceiling, my mind replaying that backyard moment over and over. Was I imagining it? Or was my world about to collapse? I didn't know. But I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. As the moonlight slanted through our blinds, casting shadows on the wall, I made a decision. Tomorrow, I'd pay attention. Really pay attention. Because if something was happening between my wife and my brother, I needed to know, even if the truth destroyed me. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the soft clatter of dishes in the kitchen, the familiar rhythm of our life pulling me from a restless sleep. Lila was already up, her hair tied back in a messy bun, moving around the kitchen with a grace that used to make my heart skip but now felt like a performance I wasn't meant to applaud. I lingered in bed, staring at the ceiling, the memory of yesterday's backyard scene burning behind my eyes, Lila's laugh, Jack's hand on her wrist, the way they seemed to exist in a bubble I couldn't pierce. My stomach churned, a mix of dread and self-doubt, and I wondered if I was blowing it all out of proportion. People laugh. People touch. It didn't have to mean anything. But the ache in my chest disagreed, heavy and insistent, like a warning I couldn't ignore. I dragged myself downstairs, forcing a smile as I entered the kitchen. Lila was at the stove, flipping pancakes, humming a tune I didn't recognize. Jack sat at the table, scrolling on his phone, his hair still damp from a shower. "Morning, Tom," he called, his voice too bright, too casual, like he hadn't noticed the way I'd watched them last night. Lila turned, her smile warm but fleeting, and handed me a mug of coffee. "You look like you need this," she said, her eyes searching mine for a moment before flicking back to the stove. I wanted to grab her, ask her what was going on, why she felt so distant, but the words stuck in my throat, heavy and useless. Instead, I muttered a thanks and sat across from Jack, the table a battlefield of unspoken questions. Our daily life had always been predictable, a comforting routine that held us together through the chaos of work and bills and the slow grind of time. I'd leave for school by 7, spend my day corralling teenagers through lessons on the American Revolution, then come home to Lila's sketches spread across the dining table, her laptop glowing with half-finished designs. Jack's presence had disrupted that rhythm, his energy filling the house like an uninvited guest who wouldn't leave. He'd sprawl on our couch, pitching ideas for his next big venture, or follow Lila around, offering to help with dishes or groceries, his charm a constant hum in the background. I'd always thought of him as harmless, a little brother who needed saving, but now every move he made felt calculated, every smile a potential betrayal. That morning, as I sipped my coffee, I noticed the small things I'd ignored before. The way Lila's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it quickly, her fingers hesitating before she set it face down. The way Jack's eyes followed her as she moved, not blatant but subtle, like he was memorizing her. The way she laughed too easily at his dumb joke about burnt pancakes, her hand brushing his shoulder as she set a plate in front of him. Each moment was a pinprick, sharp and fleeting, but together they formed a pattern I couldn't unsee. I tried to focus on my breakfast, the pancakes dry in my mouth, but my mind was elsewhere, cataloging every glance, every touch, every laugh that felt like it belonged to someone else. At school, I was distracted, my lessons on the Battle of Yorktown delivered on autopilot. My students noticed, one of them, Jake, a lanky kid with a knack for history, asking if I was okay after I fumbled a date. "Just tired," I lied, forcing a grin, but my thoughts were back home, wondering what Lila and Jack were doing in our house, alone. Were they laughing again? Was he touching her arm, her wrist, her anything? The images twisted in my mind, vivid and relentless, and by lunchtime, I was pacing the teacher's lounge, my sandwich untouched. I wanted to call Lila, to hear her voice and reassure myself it was all in my head, but my phone stayed in my pocket. What would I even say? "Hey, are you cheating on me with my brother?" The thought was absurd, but it clung to me, a shadow I couldn't shake. When I got home, the house was quiet, Lila at her desk, Jack nowhere in sight. "He went to meet some investor," she said, not looking up from her sketchpad, her voice casual but clipped, like she was guarding something. I nodded, hovering in the doorway, wanting to ask about the phone buzzes, the laughter, the way she seemed to light up around him. Instead, I asked about her day, and she gave me a rundown of client calls and deadlines, her words practiced, like a script she'd rehearsed. I watched her, searching for cracks in her calm, but she was too good, too composed, and it only made the ache in my chest worse. I told myself to stop, to trust her, to remember the woman who'd cried in my arms when we lost our first pregnancy, who'd stayed up late with me planning our future. But doubt is a poison, and it was spreading fast. That evening, we ordered pizza, the three of us sitting around the dining table, the air thick with unspoken tension, at least for me. Jack was his usual self, joking about his investor meeting, his optimism infuriatingly unshaken despite his track record of failure. Lila listened, her smile soft, her eyes bright, and I hated how natural it looked, how effortless. I tried to join in, to laugh at his stories, but my voice sounded hollow, my smiles forced. When Lila reached for a slice, her sleeve rode up, revealing a bracelet I didn't recognize, a thin silver chain with a small charm. "New?" I asked, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. She glanced at it, her fingers brushing the charm, and hesitated, just a second, but enough to make my pulse spike. "Oh, just something I found in a drawer," she said, her eyes flicking to Jack before meeting mine. Forgot I had it. The lie was so smooth, so quick, I almost believed it. But I didn't. I couldn't. Jack changed the subject, launching into a story about some tech conference, and Lila laughed, her hand resting on the table near his. I stared at that bracelet, glinting under the dining room light, and my mind raced. Had he given it to her? Was it a gift, a secret, a symbol of something I wasn't part of? The pizza sat heavy in my stomach, and I excused myself, claiming a headache, retreating to our bedroom where I could breathe without their laughter suffocating me. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking, and pulled out my phone, scrolling through Lila's social media, looking for something, anything, to prove me wrong. But her posts were the same as always: work updates, ascendancy, photos of our dog, a sunset from our last vacation. Nothing out of place. Nothing to ease the storm in my chest. As I lay in bed that night, Lila's soft breathing beside me, the bracelet's silver glint haunted my thoughts. I couldn't sleep, my mind spinning with questions I was too afraid to ask. Was she hiding something? Was Jack? The silence of the house felt louder than ever, and I knew I couldn't let it go. Tomorrow, I'd find answers, even if they broke me. I woke up with a start, my heart pounding, the remnants of a dream slipping away, Lila and Jack, their faces blurred, laughing in a room I didn't recognize. The clock read 5:47 a.m., too early to be awake, but sleep was a lost cause. Beside me, Lila slept soundly, her dark hair fanned across the pillow, her face peaceful in a way that made my chest ache with longing and suspicion. That bracelet, the one she'd claimed was old, sat on her nightstand, its silver charm catching the faint glow of the streetlight through the blinds. I stared at it, my mind churning, the questions from last night clawing their way back. Who gave it to her? Why had she lied? Was I losing her to my own brother, or was I just losing my mind? I slid out of bed, careful not to wake her, and tiptoed downstairs, the quiet house amplifying every creak of the floorboards, every thud of my pulse. In the kitchen, I made coffee, the routine grounding me even as my thoughts spiraled. I kept replaying the past few weeks, Lila's late-night phone calls, her sudden interest in dressing up, the way Jack's presence seemed to shift the air in our home. I'd always trusted her, believed in us, but now every memory felt tainted, every moment a potential clue. I tried to focus on the mundane, grading papers, planning lessons, but my mind kept drifting to that bracelet, to Jack's easy grin, to Lila's laugh that no longer felt mine. By the time she came downstairs, her eyes soft with sleep, I was already on edge, my coffee cold in my hands. "You're up early," she said, pouring herself a mug, her voice light but distant, like she was speaking from another room. I nodded, forcing a smile, but my eyes flicked to her wrist, bare now, the bracelet still upstairs. I wanted to ask about it, to demand the truth, but the words stayed locked in my throat, heavy and useless. At school, I was a mess, my lectures on the Constitution stumbling as my mind wandered. My students noticed, their whispers louder than usual, and when Sarah, a quiet girl in the front row, asked if I was okay, I snapped, "Focus on your work." The sharpness in my voice startled me, and I apologized immediately, but the damage was done. Her eyes widened, and I felt like a stranger in my own skin. During my free period, I sat in my classroom, staring at my phone, debating whether to text Lila, to confront her about the bracelet, about Jack, about everything. Instead, I opened her social media again, scrolling through her posts, looking for something, anything, to confirm or deny the storm in my head. Nothing stood out, just her usual mix of art and sunsets, but the absence of evidence only made me more restless. Was she too careful? Too clever? Or was I the one building castles out of shadows? When I got home, Jack was there, sprawled on the couch with his laptop, his voice loud as he talked on the phone about some new app idea. Lila was in her office, her door half open, music playing softly, some indie band she'd loved since college. I stood in the hallway, caught between them, feeling like an outsider in my own house. I knocked on her door, and she looked up, her smile faltering when she saw my face. "Everything okay, Tom?" she asked, her tone cautious, and I hated how it sounded like she was bracing for something. "Just checking in," I said, my voice tighter than I meant, and her eyes narrowed, searching mine. "You've been weird lately," she said, setting her pencil down. "What's going on?" The question hung there, an invitation to spill everything, the doubt, the fear, the bracelet, but I couldn't do it. Not yet. "Just tired," I lied, and her frown deepened, but she didn't push. I left her office, my heart racing, and avoided Jack's gaze as I passed him, his voice still droning on about investors and algorithms. That evening, I volunteered to grab takeout, needing air, needing space to think. At the Chinese restaurant, waiting for our order, I pulled out my phone and, almost without thinking, opened Lila's email. She'd given me her password years ago, back when trust was a given. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the login, guilt prickling at me. This wasn't me, snooping, doubting, but the image of that bracelet, of Jack's hand on her arm, pushed me forward. I logged in, my hands shaking, and skimmed her inbox, work emails, spam, a newsletter from her art class. Nothing suspicious. But then, in her sent folder, I saw it, an email to Jack, sent 2 days ago, with no subject. My breath caught, and I opened it, my eyes scanning the single line, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Don't tell Tom." The words hit like a punch, my vision blurring as I read them again, then again, hoping I'd misread. But there they were, stark and undeniable, a knife twisting in my gut. I closed the app, my hands trembling, the restaurant's chatter fading to a dull roar. Don't tell Tom. What were they hiding? What had they done? Back home, I carried the takeout bags inside, my face a mask of calm while my mind screamed. Lila and Jack were at the table, laughing about some movie they'd watched while I was gone. There is a stark contrast to the chaos inside me. I set the food down, my movements mechanical, and sat across from them, watching. Lila's eyes met mine, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt, but it was gone so fast I couldn't be sure. Jack passed me a carton of lo mein, his grin wide, oblivious, and I wanted to grab him, shake him, demand answers. Instead, I ate in silence, the food tasteless, my thoughts a whirlwind of betrayal and confusion. Was it an affair? A fling? Or something else entirely? The email burned in my memory, each word a weight pulling me under. I glanced at Lila, her fingers twirling a strand of hair, a habit I used to find endearing but now felt like a taunt. I needed to know more, to find proof, but the idea of confronting them terrified me, not because of what they might say, but because of what it would mean for us, for me, for the life I'd built with her. As we cleaned up, Lila brushed past me, her hand grazing my arm, and I flinched, the touch electric with suspicion. She paused, her brow furrowing. "Tom, seriously, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice low, and I saw Jack glance over, his expression unreadable. I wanted to scream, to show her the email, to demand why she'd written it, why she was keeping secrets with my brother. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. "Just a long day," I said, my voice hollow, and turned away, the lie bitter on my tongue. That night, as I lay beside her, the distance between us a chasm, I stared at that bracelet on her nightstand, its charm glinting like a warning. I had to find out the truth, no matter how much it hurt. But how far was I willing to go to get it? The email's words, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Don't tell Tom," burned in my mind like a brand, each syllable a fresh wound as I sat at my desk at school, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead doing nothing to drown out the chaos in my head. It was Thursday, and I'd barely slept, my night spent tossing beside Lila, her soft breathing a cruel reminder of the trust I'd thought we shared. I'd stared at that bracelet on her nightstand until dawn, its silver charm mocking me, a symbol of secrets I couldn't unravel. I'd gone through the motions of my morning, coffee, a forced smile, a kiss on Lila's cheek that felt like betrayal to myself, but inside, I was spiraling, the email's weight crushing every rational thought. I needed proof, something more than a single line in her sent folder, something to make sense of the dread that had taken root in my chest. I couldn't confront her yet, not without knowing for sure, but the not knowing was tearing me apart. At school, I was useless, my lectures on the Bill of Rights stumbling as my students exchanged glances, sensing something was off. I didn't care. My mind was back home, imagining Lila and Jack alone in our house, laughing, touching, sharing moments that should have been mine. The email had been sent 2 days ago, and yesterday, while I was at work, they'd been together. Had they met somewhere? Done something? The possibilities clawed at me, vivid and unbearable, and by lunchtime, I couldn't take it anymore. I told the office I was sick, grabbed my keys, and drove home, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I didn't know what I'd find, but I needed to see, to catch them, to end the torment of wondering. The house was quiet when I pulled into the driveway, Jack's beat-up sedan parked next to Lila's Prius. My heart pounded as I slipped inside, moving softly, like a thief in my own home. The living room was empty, the couch littered with Jack's laptop and a half-empty coffee mug. I heard voices from the kitchen, Lila's soft laugh, Jack's low murmur, and my stomach twisted, the sound pulling me forward and repelling me at once. I stood in the hallway, hidden by the wall, and peered around the corner. They were at the table, Lila's sketchpad open, Jack leaning close, pointing at something she'd drawn. Her hand rested near his, not touching but close enough to make my pulse spike. "You're brilliant," Jack said, his voice warm, intimate, and Lila's smile was so bright it hurt to look at. I wanted to storm in, demand answers, but my feet stayed rooted, my breath shallow, as I listened. "I don't know," Lila said, her tone playful but hesitant. "It's risky. What if Tom finds out?" My blood ran cold, the world tilting under me. "Finds out what?" I leaned closer, my heart a drumbeat, and Jack's voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. "He won't. We're careful." The words were a knife, slicing through the last shred of hope I'd clung to. Careful. The implication was clear, undeniable, and it hit me like a physical blow, my knees weakening. I gripped the wall, forcing myself to stay upright, to keep listening, even as every word shattered me. Lila laughed again, softer now, and said, "Okay, but we need to be quick. He's home soon." Quick. The word echoed, sickening, and I couldn't stand it anymore. I stepped into the kitchen, my voice shaking but loud. "Be quick about what?" They both froze, Lila's eyes widening, Jack's face going pale. The sketchpad lay between them, a half-finished logo for some app, but I barely registered it. All I saw was their guilt, the way Lila's hand jerked back, the way Jack's jaw tightened. "Tom," Lila said, her voice high, unsteady. "You're home early." I ignored her, my eyes locked on Jack. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice low, dangerous, a tone I didn't recognize as my own. Jack raised his hands, like he was calming a wild animal. "Whoa, Tom, it's nothing. Just talking about work." But his eyes darted to Lila, and hers dropped to the table, and the lie was so obvious it was almost insulting. "Don't," I snapped, stepping closer, my hands clenched into fists. "I saw the email, Lila. Can't wait to see you. Don't tell Tom." "What the hell is that?" Her face crumpled, her mouth opening, then closing, like she couldn't find the words. Jack stood, his chair scraping, and said, "Tom, you've got it wrong," but I cut him off, my voice rising. "Don't lie to me. I'm not an idiot." The kitchen felt too small, the air too thick, and Lila's eyes filled with tears, her hands twisting in her lap. "Tom, please," she whispered, but I didn't want her please. I wanted the truth. "Are you sleeping with him?" I asked, the words raw, tearing out of me like glass. Her silence was louder than any confession, her eyes flicking to Jack, then back to me, and I knew. I knew. "It's not what you think," she said finally, her voice breaking, but I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Not what I think." "Then what is it, Lila?" "Because it looks like my wife and my brother are sneaking around behind my back." Jack stepped forward, his voice calm but strained. "Tom, listen, we didn't want to hurt you, hurt me." I shouted, my control snapping. "You're my brother. She's my wife." Lila stood, tears streaming down her face, reaching for me, but I backed away, her touch poison now. "How long?" I demanded. "How long have you two been?" I couldn't finish, the word choking me. Lila sobbed, shaking her head. "It's not like that, Tom. It was a mistake, a stupid mistake, and we stopped. I roared, turning to Jack, who wouldn't meet my eyes. "When?" "After you sent that email. After you gave her that bracelet." Her hand flew to her wrist, bare now, but the guilt in her eyes was confirmation enough. The room spun, my world collapsing in real time, and I stumbled back, my breath ragged. Lila was crying, saying my name, but her voice was distant, drowned out by the roar in my head. Jack tried to speak, but I pointed at him, my voice deadly quiet. "Get out. Now." He hesitated, then nodded, grabbing his jacket and leaving without a word. Lila sank into a chair, sobbing, but I couldn't look at her. My heart was a raw, bleeding thing, and all I could think was that the life I'd loved, the woman I'd trusted, the brother I'd protected, they'd both betrayed me. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, my steps heavy, my mind blank except for one thought: what now? As I reached the stairs, Lila's voice followed me, broken and desperate. "Tom, please, let me explain," but I didn't stop. I couldn't. Not yet. Not when the truth was still sinking in, sharp and unforgiving, leaving me to wonder if there was anything left to salvage. I stood at the top of the stairs, Lila's broken voice echoing behind me. Tom, please, let me explain, but it was like hearing her through water, distant and warped, unable to reach the part of me that still cared. My chest was a furnace, burning with rage and grief, the image of her tear-streaked face and Jack's guilty silence seared into my mind. I didn't turn back. I couldn't. The truth had gutted me, my wife and my brother, tangled in a secret that made a mockery of my trust, my love, my life. I stumbled into our bedroom, a phrase that now felt like a lie, and slammed the door, the sound sharp and final, a barrier between me and the wreckage downstairs. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my hands shaking, my breath coming in short, ragged bursts, and stared at the floor, trying to make sense of a world that had just collapsed. The hours blurred. Lila didn't come upstairs, and I didn't go down. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of settling wood, each sound a reminder of the emptiness swallowing me whole. I kept replaying the kitchen scene, Lila's sobbed confession, it was a mistake, a stupid mistake, and we stopped, and Jack's pathetic attempt to calm me, we didn't want to hurt you. The words were knives, twisting deeper with every loop. A mistake. Stopped. Didn't want to hurt me. Lies, all of it, or at best, half-truths dressed up to soften the blow. I saw the bracelet in my mind, its silver charm glinting on her nightstand, and my stomach churned. Had he given it to her after? Before? Was it a promise, a memory, a trophy? The questions were relentless, each one a fresh wound, and I had no answers, only the raw, bleeding certainty that nothing would ever be the same. By morning, I was hollow, my eyes gritty from sleeplessness, my body heavy with exhaustion. I called in sick to school, my voice flat as I lied about a stomach bug, and stayed in the bedroom, avoiding Lila. I heard her moving around downstairs, dishes clinking, her soft footsteps, the front door opening and closing, but she didn't knock, didn't try to talk. Maybe she knew I wasn't ready. Maybe she was afraid of what I'd say. I didn't know, and I didn't care. I just wanted to be alone, to sit with the pain until it made sense, if it ever could. My phone buzzed with texts, colleagues checking in, a reminder about parent-teacher conferences, but I ignored them, except for one from Jack. I'm sorry, Tom. I'm leaving town. Let's talk when you're ready. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the reply button, a dozen venomous responses flashing through my mind. But I deleted it instead, his words too little, too late, a coward's way out. That afternoon, I forced myself downstairs, hunger and thirst finally overriding my need to hide. Lila was gone, her car missing from the driveway, a note on the counter in her neat handwriting, at a client meeting. Back by 5. I love you. The last 3 words felt like a slap, and I crumpled the note, tossing it into the trash. I love you. How could she write that after what she'd done? How could she look at me, touch me, share my bed, all while carrying that secret? I made a sandwich, the motions mechanical, and ate standing at the counter, the bread tasteless, my eyes fixed on the kitchen table where it had all unraveled. I saw them there, laughing over her sketchpad, Jack's hand near hers, their voices low and intimate, and the sandwich turned to ash in my mouth. I dropped it, my hands gripping the counter, and fought the urge to smash something, anything, to match the chaos inside me. When Lila came home, I was in the living room, staring at the TV, the volume off, the screen a blur of colors. She hesitated in the doorway, her purse slung over her shoulder, her face pale and drawn. Tom, she started, her voice soft, but I held up a hand, cutting her off. Don't, I said, my voice low, steady, though my heart was racing. I can't do this right now. Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, retreating to her office, the door clicking shut behind her. The silence returned, thicker now, a wall between us that grew with every passing hour. That night, I slept on the couch, the cushions stiff and unfamiliar, the house too quiet without Jack's laughter or Lila's humming. I dreamed of them together, their faces blurred, their hands entwined, and woke with a start, my chest tight, my eyes wet. I didn't go back to sleep. The next few days were a haze of avoidance and tension. Lila tried to talk, leaving notes, offering coffee, her eyes pleading for a chance to explain, but I shut her out, my anger a shield against her tears. I went back to school, throwing myself into work, staying late to grade papers, anything to delay going home. My students noticed my distraction, my colleagues asked if I was okay, but I brushed them off, my smiles brittle, my patience thin. At home, Lila and I moved around each other like ghosts, polite but distant, our conversations limited to logistics, bills, groceries, the dog. Every glance at her felt like a betrayal of myself, every touch of her hand on mine a reminder of what she'd done. I stopped looking at her wrist, stopped checking her phone, stopped searching for more proof. I didn't need it. The truth was enough, and it was destroying me. By the weekend, the strain was unbearable. Lila cornered me in the kitchen, her face set, her voice trembling but firm. "Tom, we have to talk," she said, blocking my path to the door. "You can't keep shutting me out." I stared at her, my jaw tight, the anger I'd buried rising like a tide. "What's there to say, Lila?" I asked, my voice cold. "You slept with my brother. You lied to me." Her face crumpled, but she didn't back down. "It was one time," she said, her words rushing out. "One stupid, drunken mistake, months ago. It meant nothing, Tom. I swear," I ended it. "Nothing." The word was a lie, I could feel it in her eyes, in the way she couldn't hold my gaze. "Then why the email?" I demanded, stepping closer. "Why the bracelet? Why hide it if it was nothing?" She flinched, her hands twisting together. "I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered, and I laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Too late for that." I pushed past her, grabbing my keys and heading for the door, her voice following me, desperate and broken. "Tom, please, don't go." But I did, the door slamming behind me, the sound echoing in the quiet street. I drove aimlessly, my hands shaking, my mind a storm of her words and mine. One time. Nothing. Mistake. I didn't know what to believe, didn't know if I could ever look at her again without seeing Jack's hand on her arm, her smile for him. I ended up at a park, sitting on a bench, watching families laugh and play, their joy a cruel contrast to the emptiness inside me. My phone buzzed with Lila's calls, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not when I didn't know who I was anymore, or what we were, or what, if anything, was left to fight for. As the sun dipped below the horizon casting long shadows, I realized I had to decide, stay and face the ruins, or walk away and start over. But either way, something was about to break. The park bench was cold beneath me, the evening air sharp against my skin as I sat there, staring at the fading sunset, the weight of Lila's betrayal pressing down like a stone I couldn't shift. Her words from the kitchen echoed in my mind, one time, a stupid mistake, it meant nothing, but they felt hollow, a flimsy bandage over a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. I'd driven away from our house, from her pleading voice, from the life we'd built together, but I couldn't outrun the pain, the image of her and Jack, the email that had shattered my trust. My phone buzzed in my pocket, her name flashing on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail, each unanswered call a small act of defiance against the chaos she'd unleashed. I didn't know what I wanted, forgiveness, revenge, escape, but sitting there, watching kids chase each other across the grass, I knew I couldn't keep running from the truth. I had to face it, even if it meant facing myself. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into a cheap motel on the edge of town, the kind with flickering neon signs and threadbare carpets, a place where no one would ask questions. Lying on the lumpy mattress, staring at the water-stained ceiling, I let the silence swallow me, my thoughts a tangled mess of anger and grief. I thought about Lila, about the woman I'd married, the one who'd laughed with me over late-night pizza, who'd held my hand through doctor's appointments and bad days, who'd promised me forever. I thought about Jack, my little brother, the one I'd bailed out of trouble too many times to count, his charm always a mask for his recklessness. How had it come to this? How had I missed the signs, the cracks in our life that let this betrayal seep through? I wanted to hate them both, but beneath the rage was something worse, hurt, raw and deep, a wound that made me question everything I'd believed about love, about family, about myself. The next morning, I called my principal, taking a week's leave, blaming a family emergency. It wasn't a lie, not really, but saying it out loud felt like admitting defeat. I spent the day driving, aimless, the radio off, the hum of the engine my only company. I ended up at a coffee shop in a neighboring town, a place Lila and I had never been, where I could sit anonymously and think. I ordered a black coffee, too bitter but grounding, and pulled out a notebook, jotting down thoughts, questions, fragments of the life I was trying to understand. Why had she done it? Was it my fault? Had I been too distant, too predictable, too safe? Had Jack's charm, his reckless energy, filled a void I didn't see. The questions looped, endless, but writing them down gave me a sliver of control, a way to pin down the chaos. By the third day, I was tired of hiding. I drove back to the house, my heart pounding as I pulled into the driveway. Lila's car was there, and I braced myself, expecting another fight, another round of tears and excuses. But when I walked in, the house was quiet, the air heavy with the scent of her lavender candle. She was in the living room, curled on the couch, her eyes red and puffy, a tissue crumpled in her hand. She looked up, startled, and stood, her voice trembling. "Tom, you're back." I nodded, my throat tight, and set my keys down, the sound loud in the silence. "I needed space," I said, my voice flat, and she nodded, biting her lip, tears spilling over. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, but I shook my head, not ready for apologies, not ready for anything. We sat, her on the couch, me in the armchair, the distance between us a chasm. "Tell me everything," I said finally, my voice low but steady. "No lies. No half-truths. Everything." She hesitated, her hands twisting in her lap, then nodded, her words coming slow, halting, like each one cost her. She told me about a night 3 months ago, Jack drunk and charming, her lonely and vulnerable after a fight we'd had about money. "One kiss," she said, "one stupid, fleeting moment that spiraled into something more, just once, before she stopped it, ashamed. She swore it was over, that the email was about a surprise for my birthday, a joint project, a logo she'd designed for Jack's new app, something they'd kept secret to surprise me." I listened, my face a mask, my heart torn between believing her and wanting to scream that it didn't matter, that the trust was gone. I didn't know if I could forgive her, but sitting there, watching her cry, I felt something shift, not forgiveness, not yet, but a flicker of strength, a realization that I could survive this, that I was more than the sum of her mistakes. "I need time," I said, standing, my voice steady now. "I don't know what this means for us, but I can't stay here right now." Her face crumpled, but she nodded, whispering, "I'll wait, Tom. As long as it takes." I left her there, grabbed a bag, and drove back to the motel, my mind clearer but no less heavy. I wasn't ready to decide, to stay, to leave, to fight, but I was starting to see a path forward, one step at a time. Over the next few days, I leaned on small things to keep me grounded. I called my friend Mike, a history teacher from a neighboring school, and met him for coffee, spilling the whole story over lukewarm lattes. He listened, his face grim, and didn't sugarcoat it. "That's rough, man," he said, clapping my shoulder. "But you're tougher than this. You'll figure it out." His words, simple but solid, were a lifeline, reminding me I wasn't alone. I started running again, something I hadn't done since college, the burn in my lungs a distraction from the ache in my chest. I wrote more, filling pages with anger, hurt, and eventually, glimmers of hope, not for Lila and me, not yet, but for myself, for a life I could rebuild, with or without her. By the end of the week, I felt stronger, not whole but steady, like a house after a storm, damaged but still standing. I drove back home, ready to talk, to face whatever came next. But when I walked in, the house was different, too quiet, too empty. Lila's sketchpad was gone, her laptop missing, a note on the counter in her handwriting, "Tom, I'm staying with my sister for a while. I love you. I'm sorry." My heart sank, not with anger but with a strange, hollow sadness. She was gone, and I hadn't expected it, hadn't braced for the silence her absence would bring. I sat at the kitchen table, the note in my hand, and realized this was a new kind of betrayal, not an affair, not a lie, but her choice to leave when I wasn't ready to let go. As I stared at the empty house, the weight of her absence settled over me. I wondered if this was the end, or just another twist in a story I couldn't predict. The note lay crumpled in my hand, Lila's handwriting, "I'm staying with my sister. I love you. I'm sorry." A quiet detonation in the empty kitchen, its words sinking into me like stones into still water. I sat at the table, the house too silent, its familiar creaks and hums now a hollow chorus underscoring her absence. My chest ached, not with the sharp, searing rage of that night in the kitchen when I'd learned of her and Jack, but with a deeper, duller sorrow, the kind that comes when you realize something you've held onto for years has slipped through your fingers, maybe for good. I'd spent the past week clawing my way toward some kind of strength, piecing myself together with runs and coffee talks and late-night scribbles in a notebook, but this, her leaving, felt like a final unraveling, a twist I hadn't seen coming. I stared at the note, rereading it, searching for something between the lines, but it was just her, raw and brief, offering love and regret in equal measure. I didn't know what to feel, anger, relief, grief, or if I had the energy to feel anything at all. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I folded the note, slipped it into my pocket, and moved through the house like a ghost, noticing the small things she'd taken: her favorite mug, the sketchpad that always sat on the dining table, the lavender candle that had scented our evenings. Each absence was a pinprick, sharp but fleeting, a reminder that she'd chosen to step away, to give me space or maybe to save herself. I sank onto the couch, the same one where Jack had sprawled with his laptop, where Lila and I had watched movies curled together, and let the silence settle over me. My mind wandered back to our early days, her laugh at my bad jokes, the way she'd dance in the kitchen to old songs, the promises we'd made under starlit skies. Those memories felt like relics now, artifacts of a life I wasn't sure I could reclaim. But beneath the hurt, a quiet voice whispered, "You're still here. You're still you." And for the first time in weeks, I listened. The days that followed were a slow, deliberate rebuilding. I went back to work, my lessons on the Civil War delivered with a focus I hadn't managed since the betrayal came to light. My students noticed, Jake in the back row giving me a nod when I nailed a point about Lincoln's speeches, and I felt a flicker of pride, a reminder that I was good at this, that I had something to give beyond the wreckage of my marriage. After school, I kept running, the rhythm of my feet on pavement a steady counterpoint to the chaos in my heart. I met Mike for beers one evening, his blunt advice: "You don't have to decide everything now, man. Just keep moving," a lifeline I clung to. I wrote more, filling pages with reflections, not just on Lila and Jack but on myself, on the man I'd been, the one I wanted to become. I wasn't healed, not by a long shot, but I was learning to carry the pain, to let it shape me without breaking me. A week after Lila left, I got a letter from her, forwarded from her sister's address in Cincinnati. It was long, written in her neat, slanting script, and I hesitated before opening it, my hands trembling as I sat at the kitchen table. Her words were raw, unguarded, a confession and a plea rolled into one. She wrote about her guilt, how it had eaten at her since that night with Jack, how she tried to bury it by being the perfect wife, only to realize she was lying to us both. She admitted the email was about the birthday surprise, a logo for Jack's app, a gift she'd thought would mend things between me and him, but confessed she'd leaned on Jack's attention too much, crossing lines she couldn't take back. She was seeing a therapist, working on herself, and she loved me but understood if I couldn't forgive her. "I'm not asking you to take me back," she wrote. "But I'm asking you to know I'm trying to be better. I'll wait, Tom, as long as you need." I read it twice, then set it down, my eyes wet, my heart a tangle of love and anger and something new, compassion, not for me, but for her, for the woman who'd lost herself as much as she'd lost me. I didn't reply, not right away. Instead, I called my sister, Ellen, who listened as I poured out the story, her voice steady and fierce. "You don't owe her anything," she said, "but you owe yourself a life you can live with." Her words stuck, and I started thinking about what that life looked like. I wasn't ready to let Lila back in, but I wasn't ready to let her go either. I needed time, space to grow into whoever I was becoming. I started small, rearranging the living room, buying new sheets, planting herbs in the backyard, acts of reclaiming, of making the house mine again. I even reached out to Jack, not to forgive but to understand. His voicemail was brief, his voice subdued. "I'm in Chicago, Tom. I'm sorry. I'll talk whenever you're ready." I didn't call back, but the act of trying felt like progress, a step toward closing a wound I'd let fester. Months passed, the seasons shifting from summer's heat to autumn's crisp bite. I kept teaching, kept running, kept writing, each day a brick in the foundation of a new life. Lila and I texted occasionally, cautious exchanges about logistics, bills, the dog, but sometimes, a glimpse of the old her would slip through, a joke or a memory that made my heart ache. One evening, she called, her voice soft but steady. "Can we talk?" she asked, and I said yes, not because I was ready to forgive but because I was ready to listen. We met at a neutral coffee shop, her face older, sadder, but still beautiful, her eyes searching mine. She didn't push, didn't plead, just told me about her therapy, her art, her hope for a future we might share, or at least respect. I told her about my running, my writing, my slow climb out of the dark. We didn't resolve anything, but we parted with a hug, her warmth familiar and foreign, a promise of something undefined. As I drove home, the sky streaked with orange and pink, I thought about betrayal, how it breaks you but also remakes you, if you let it. I'd learned that love isn't a shield against pain, but a choice to keep going, to find meaning in the mess. I didn't know if Lila and I would rebuild what we'd lost, or if I'd walk away for good, but I knew I was strong enough to choose, to live with whatever came next. The lesson wasn't about trust or forgiveness, but about resilience, about finding yourself when everything else falls apart. I pulled into my driveway, the house no longer a tomb but a canvas, and stepped inside, ready for whatever the next chapter held. But as I hung my keys, my phone buzzed with a text from Jack, "I'm coming back to town. Can we talk?" My heart stuttered, the past rushing back, and I realized the story wasn't over, not yet.